The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome today to our DocuWare 6.7 Capture in Store webinar. We will be focusing on all the different possibilities and policies and procedures that we follow to store documents into DocuWare. We will go through different ways of storing, and we would like to start by taking a look at some of the scanning possibilities in DocuWare. So what we have in DocuWare are the scan configurations, so we could use our local scanners with what we call our DW scan options. And with our DW scan tool, we could scan directly into DocuWare's trays or directly into DocuWare's file cabinets. So I want to show you in DocuWare what this would look like. So we have a little scan button, and this is our DocuWare web client and our little scan button, which allows us to scan documents to DocuWare. Now, if I go and open up my scan, it'll open up my DocuWare desktop. And in my DocuWare desktop, I have my options to set my scan configurations. So you can see you have scan configurations, and I have multiple configurations available to me, and I could add import configurations kind of to tell it what I want to do with those documents when I scan them in. So if I open up my scan configuration option here, I basically discover my scanner, and then once I do that, I could select what I would like to do. If I'd like to scan different modes, if I want to use color or black and white, grayscale, I can auto rotate. I could automatically delete blank pages. I could use different languages, orientations. So I have a lot of different options of how I can manage my images coming into the system. I can also check an auto upload, which will take the documents directly out of my scan configuration and my scan tool and put them directly in DocuWare, or I could just basically leave those in my scan tool. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and scan some documents, and when they run through this process, I'm not going to automatically upload, and I'm going to leave those documents in my DW scan tool. So you can see the documents are now coming into the system, and once they're in, I could basically use some of my existing tools to manage those, and I could also upload those in. So if we take a look, I'm going to just jump back to my slide and review. Here are settings that we've looked at. We can also apply configurations where we do barcode or zonal recognition. That's all part of the DocuWare Import configurations. Now that we've scanned in our images, now what we have are our documents sitting in our DW Scan DocuWare desktop app rather than going directly into a tray or a file cabinet. What I could do here is do some rotation, insert pages, delete pages, split documents. So I just want to review and show you where that would be in DocuWare. So here now I have documents. I could reorder pages. I can use my rotating. If it's sideways or landscape, portrait, I could delete pages. I could delete entire documents. Then based on that, I can move my pages from one place to another. I could add pages in, like I said, and I can also delete a page if I'd like, and then I could go ahead and use my upload now. So again, if I leave my auto upload on, it'll automatically bring them in. If I use my upload now, based on the scan configuration and the import configuration, it knows where to put these documents and how to process these documents. All right, so now that the documents have come into the system, now we could either use manual to bring additional documents in, and we could do different methodology to do that. So let me just show you quickly now how I can manually import some documents into the system. So my scan job's done. I'll just go ahead and bring that down. I'll show you where those documents went. But for now, I'm just going to come over to my Jenkins inbox. I have no documents in here right now. Oh, sorry, I do have one. So my doc's sitting in here. But if I want to bring more documents in, I could simply use my import option. Once I do that, I could go ahead and select any documents I would like to bring into the system. So maybe I'll bring these two in. Just open those up and bring them into DocuWare. As well, the other option, if you prefer, you could just, again, go ahead and grab documents and just drag them in. Either way, same process, just a matter of comfort, which way you would prefer to go. So now we have all our files sitting in here from our direct drop, and then we scanned in a bunch of documents, but I haven't talked about where those documents are right now. So that's our manual import process. So what happened to those documents that I scanned? I scanned them into what we call our intelligent indexing document tray. So when we set up our trays, we could basically determine if we want to use intelligent indexing as a service or if we would prefer to use other tools to index our documents. So here with the intelligent indexing, we have this as a service that you could purchase, which allows you to bring your documents into our tray and let our intelligent indexing service learn your documents. And now with 6.7, also intelligent indexing can be added on as a module running locally on your system, so you're not going out to an actual service in the cloud. Everything would be processed internally in your system. So let me just show you what this is all about. So when we come over to our DocuWare system, if I come over to my intelligent indexing tray now, as opposed to my basket or my inbox, in my intelligent indexing, what we see here, the difference is in the inbox, our documents have no indication, no confidence indication on those, whereas an intelligent indexing tray has these banners on these documents. So these banners are indicating the confidence level, if it's seen this document before, if it knows what indexing it would like to give to these documents when we bring them in. So if I take a look at one of these documents and I store it into DocuWare, when I store it now, rather than doing a bit of, let's say, one-click indexing or typing in or using our autofill, here our indexing's already been done from our intelligent indexing service. So if we store our document in, it's learned this document and it knows exactly what we want to pull in from these documents. Now, if I look at one of the documents that has a red indication level, typically the red indication means it's never seen a document before. Green means it's pretty confident that it understands the indexing we would like tied to that image. So if I take this document and I store it, this one has been through the process, but it's missing some information. So it doesn't have a company name on it, and it doesn't have an order number. So there's maybe bits of information because it's never seen this document, what type of data I would like to pull. So if that happens the first time it's seen it, you basically train the document. So when I say in my company field, I would like to have this company information come off of this invoice, it'll automatically bring that in. As well, if there's an order number on this document, you could go find your order number and you could simply highlight the field and let it know where you would like to get that order number. So if I bring in this bit of data, it'll learn that information. Then I could go ahead and store the document. So now the document will go in. The next time it sees that, it should remember what it's learned about that document. All right. So how do we set up an intelligent indexing tray for the system? Well, this is what we call our web configuration, and based on your rights, you could set up your own trays, or your DocuWare administrator could set up your trays for you. And when you want to use your intelligent indexing, it's simply configuring that particular tray to use the intelligent indexing service, and then you map across where you would like to see the data from the image go to when it's put into the store dialogues in DocuWare. So if I show you here, if I want to take a look at that and I come to my DocuWare system and I go into my configuration, so based on our rights, if I come into my configuration in DocuWare and I take a look at this, as it brings up my configuration options, I could select what it is that I want to work on in my configuration. So I would be looking at my document trays, but I have other configurations in here. If I look at my document trays, I'll have a list of all the trays that I have assigned to users in DocuWare. And then based on those particular trays, I could select or add, create new trays for intelligent indexing. But I just want to show you, if I select the intelligent indexing tray, when you look at your configuration, basically you have some settings in here tied to which cabinets you're bringing your documents into. But the important part is here in your intelligent indexing. It's as simple as your checkbox turning on intelligent indexing, telling it what dialog you would like to store with when you use intelligent indexing, and mapping across those particular fields to match up the data on your images. So that's how we would do our configuration. As well, in our intelligent indexing configuration, we could get information on the system, if it's turned on, how many documents we still have available, if we need to activate or change some of our field mappings or create new intelligent indexing configurations. So this was a very useful tool here, because if I'm in my configuration, I simply come to my intelligent indexing, and now I could just display all that information. If it's enabled, if it's accessible. So we have some tools to check with if I want to reset my intelligent indexing, as well configure a new tray for field mapping. So we have that easily accessible to configure as well. So that is our intelligent indexing service. If anybody has any questions, certainly let me know. Now, if we're going to be storing documents, I'm basically uploaded some documents into my tray. If we're going to be dragging those in, which I've done, then we could start to look at some of the available options to index those documents if we're not using our intelligent indexing service. So if I come back over to DocuWare and I take a look in my tray, here's my intelligent indexing tray. If I go over to my inbox, I have those documents I brought in. And if I want to store a document, so maybe I'll take a look at this doc. If I want to store it, when I bring the document in and my image comes up in my viewer, here is where I could start doing my indexing by using my one-click indexing to fill my fields. Or if I like, I could simply use my autofill where I type in characters and it'll show me what companies I have available based on that information. I have select lists where I could just hit drop downs and use select lists to fill my information in. I also have my calendar where I could pick the date that maybe I want to store based on the date of the invoice. If I want to use amounts, I could easily grab those using my one-click indexing. So I have these different possibilities to store my information. Then, like I say, if we want to use what we call our autofill, if I type in a bit of information on a company and I use my autofill indexing, it'll populate that data that's tied to that document. So that's how we would simply do our storage and indexing of a document. I love the one-click indexing. It just makes everything so easy, and there's no chance of me mistyping something because I'm pulling it right off the image. So I'm going to go ahead and just store this document. So that's our simple way of doing it and using those different tools. I showed you the autofill, but I didn't show you the keep entries, and I want to also show you, along with the keep entries, a couple other means that we could use. So I'll show you the keep entry, and then I also want to show you what we call our pre-indexing. And pre-indexing is basically tying the data to the image but not committing it or not storing it to your file cabinet. It's keeping the data tied to the image but leaving it into a document tray. So first I'll show you the store of a document, and let me select two docs. Store the document, and maybe what I'll do for my information is I will put in Leisure Park Mosier, use my autofill index, use my autofill index. Now I have additional parts of data. Now if I go ahead and use my keep entries, what that means is all the documents that I've selected will automatically maintain this data. So maybe this one has a specific voucher number that I want to store it with. I could store. My next document automatically comes up and keeps all that information for me, which makes it simple now. I could just change my voucher number on this document and store it. So now we've stored them, but I didn't have to re-index every time if I'm storing a bulk amount of documents that have the same data tied to them. Then the other option that I was talking about was here. If I want to do a store again, and maybe this time I'll select another company, maybe Perfect Made. And this time, again, I'll use my autofill for my data. And when I use my autofill and bring in the rest of my information, now, rather than commit it to the cabinet, if I do a pre-index, now the document remains in the tray. But if we take a look at that document, if we take a look at this document and I go to store it again, now all the data is tied to it. So basically your pre-index means it's still in a non-long-time archiving location, which would be your cabinet, but the indexing will stay with that document till we do finally store it into our DocuWare file cabinet. Also, we can store electronic documents rather than store them through the document tray and drag them in or import them in manually. We also have the ability to use what we call our Windows Explorer client to store some of our documents. So if we're going to go ahead and use our Windows Explorer client, with our Explorer client, if I'm working in an application outside of DocuWare, so perhaps I'm working in Microsoft Word and I have a document open and I want to maintain this document's original format, which is a Word doc. I want to bring it in DocuWare. I can still use the tools that I've shown you, but we also have the ability, if we would like, is to go ahead and use from that application, save as, and when we store it now, rather than store it somewhere on my local drive, if I have my Windows Explorer client installed, I just go to my DocuWare drive, which is my Windows Explorer client, and I could go and basically drill into the folders just like I would in a Windows file system. And maybe where I would put this would be in my Leisure Park folder. And maybe I have a specific project folder I store that in. And maybe my document type would be an invoice out for my sales department. And here's my folder. So here's where I store my documents. When I bring that up and I drill to my location and I save, now what I've done is index this document to follow the information or the path that I've stored in, and it'll bring up my storage log dialog, and based on where I put the document, it brings all that data in. So it brings in my company, it brings in my folder, which was my contact, my department, subjects coming in, the invoice out, date, project. All my data exists already. I store the document, and now it's in DocuWare. So it's just another way, if you're comfortable with browsing through folders, to store a document in. Very useful and very easy to index on that information. So that's storing from outside applications using our Explorer client. And then we also, again, another tool is using our DocuWare Printer. Some of you that have the Windows client may understand it as TIFF Maker. The difference between the DocuWare Printer and the TIFF Maker are where TIFF Maker, you had multiple TIFF makers and you decided which printer configuration you wanted to use, whereas with DocuWare Printer, in the back side of the system, we identify those documents. We predefine those documents based on information on them. Then when we run through our DocuWare Printer, it determines what configuration to use, and then it'll index your document based on those printer configurations. So that's very simple. You just use your DocuWare printer. I'll just show you quickly what I'm talking about, but it's pretty straightforward. You have a document, you have your printers, and now along with your other printers, you'll have one called DocuWare Printer, and if you hit your print, it'll basically print directly into DocuWare. The other options that we have when we use DocuWare Printer are we can also email that document out after it's converted to a PDF, and we could also send it directly to a physical printer in that process. So we could do a couple other things with DocuWare Printer other than just print and store to DocuWare. Another option we have is we could use what we call our C2O or Connect to Outlook module. And with our Connect to Outlook module, now we could store mail directly into DocuWare and pull index data off documents based on those configurations. So this Connect to Outlook, very useful tool. If you're working in Outlook, we have a DocuWare tab once we install this client, and with this tab, we have different store configurations and search configurations so we could work right within Outlook without going into DocuWare, but still communicating and storing and integrating within DocuWare. So I'm going to come back home, and if I go to an email that I have, I simply right-click on my email, and I could here store it directly into DocuWare. And if I select a configuration to store this mail directly into DocuWare, simply by bringing this up, I have the option to store it directly without giving me a storage dialog, or I could bring up a storage dialog in this process where I may want to add some additional information in. So based on that, maybe I would like to just add another piece of information in to my document. And based on that information, and maybe a project number, I could tie a project number to it. Now I could store it with my email first, or I could store it with the attachment first, or I could just simply store it with the attachment and drop that part of the email. So this is, again, another means to automate a lot of your processes and store a lot of your mail. Then you simply hit store, and now your document goes directly into your DocuWare file cabinet. So now that document is stored in DocuWare, certainly retrievable for anyone in the organization that has rights to this document. So now you no longer have to worry about forwarding mail. You just simply let them know that document's in DocuWare. And finally, we have what we call our DocuWare Import process. So when we used our DW scan, we scanned directly into our DocuWare desktop application or directly into a tray based on a scanner locally attached to our machine. But what a lot of people use are network devices. And if we have network devices, we typically use what we call our DocuWare Import process. So this is very similar to what we called active import in the DocuWare Thick client or the Windows client. And here we do the same thing. We monitor folders. So we scan to folders, whether they're on our machine or on the network. When we scan to them, we have import configurations that are tied to those monitored folders. And once we do that, that automates the process. We could read information from those documents. We could separate by that information. We could read barcodes. We could automatically index information based on those configurations. So I just want to show you that's very simply part of the DocuWare desktop. So when I showed you the scan options, we also have the import options. So basically with our DocuWare import, we tell it what the source folder would be, which is meaning where we're going to scan to. And then we use our different configurations tied to those jobs as to how to process those images. So that's very simple. Scan to folder, process them based on those configurations. So those are some of the many possibilities to store documents into DocuWare. And at this point, that will conclude everything that I want to show you on the client side. I will definitely make this webinar available for those of you that received Tuesday's link. I'll make a link available for this webinar as well. And then as the series continues, we will talk more on the search capabilities of DocuWare, and then we will get into the workflow possibilities within DocuWare. So I appreciate everyone's attention today. I hope this shows you a lot of the newer features and new ways we do things in DocuWare. If anybody is interested in the upgrade packages, or if anybody is interested in what we call our side grade packages, you can certainly get a hold of DocuWare, or you can get a hold of your authorized DocuWare partner and discuss the possibility of getting to the most current version. That would be 6.7 now. And that is what I wanted to share with everyone today. Again, thank you, and I appreciate your attention. And we will see you soon. So thank you for attending today's webinar. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.